Thank you so much for coming. My name is Alex Johnson of FinTech Takes. I am delighted to get the chance to moderate this closing session. This is going to be a little bit different because one of the things that I've noticed, this is my first emerge, it will not be my last emerge, this has been fantastic. I've noticed that everyone is here because they're very mission aligned, right? We're all trying to advance this mission of financial health. And for the most part, that's fantastic. And, whoops, go back. It gives us a sense, I think, of like we're all pulling on the same oar, we're all trying to accomplish the same things. However, it can at some points be a little bit preaching to the choir. And we wanted to end, whoops, stop doing that. We wanted to end by focusing a little bit more on where we might disagree. Because I think at the bottom of a lot of these financial health discussions are some really hard conversations, some hard questions, and quite frankly, some trade-offs, some things that we don't necessarily know which way we want to come down on. And in order to make meaningful progress, I think we at least need to look those difficult trade-offs in the eye. So what we're going to do, hard questions about the future of finance, is I'm going to share a list of prompts on screen, one at a time. And for each one of these prompts, I'm going to ask two things. One, I would like all of you to raise your hands if you agree with those prompts. So we're going to start there. Prompts are going to come up on screen. You just raise your hand if you agree. Second thing I'm going to ask is for each of my panelists to hold up a sign. We have signs. We have agree, we have disagree. Please familiarize yourselves with your signs. Don't hold up the wrong end, because like you'll be on record forever as agreeing or disagreeing with this, so be very careful. They will hold up their signs. We'll see what they think. This is really designed to provoke conversation. So where we see agreement or disagreement, we'll talk about why, and we'll get through as many prompts as we have time for. Does that sound okay? Excellent. All right, so we already did introductions, so I'm just going to skip right through that, and we are going to rock and roll. Here is our first prompt. Financial nihilism. When people believe the traditional paths to financial security are out of reach, risky financial behavior becomes rational. How many folks agree with that? Okay. All right, quite a bit of agreement. I'm glad you guys can't totally see them out in the audience because I don't want them to bias you too much. All right, my panelists, agree, disagree? Agree, disagree. Okay, great, fantastic. All right, Alex, why don't you start us off on why you agree with this one?
I think because we, as Americans, many of us, are conditioned to seek out opportunity where we can. It's in our DNA. And we are going to look for those pathways wherever we can find them. And so I don't know to what extent it's thought of as risk versus it's this kind of, whether it's the meme coins of the world or other kinds of assets that may not necessarily be in the traditional space, if it's thought of as another pathway into opportunity and thus something that feels like it's both deeply American and deeply human. That, at least intuitively, feels rational to me in that we are seeking out a future that we all want to capitalize on and doing that in ways that are presenting themselves to us.
Absolutely. Lisa, I'm going to let you take the con. Why do you disagree?
Because the prompt to me suggests that people have choice in the financial behavior that they engage in, and I think that most consumers don't have a choice. We have millions of people who live in credit deserts, and the only financial services operators who are functioning in their neighborhoods are predatory lenders, finance companies, pawn shops, pawn brokers, buy here, pay here, lenders, hard money lenders. And so those people don't have a choice, so they're engaging in risky financial behavior because that's the only option that is available to them. It's the only option that they know. I never will forget, we, at the National Fair Housing Alliance, we have this framework that's called Where You Live Matters. It is steeped in the fact that if you give me your address, I can tell you everything about your financial situation And it is directly related to the fact that opportunity is inextricably linked to place. And segregation determines so much about the opportunities that are available to people in these spaces where they live. And I never will forget, a young woman, African-American woman came up to me afterward, and she said, I lived in LaDroit, the LaDroit neighborhood in Washington, D.C. when I was attending Howard University, well-educated, came from an educated family, worked as an intern on the Hill, and when I got my check, I cashed it at a check cashier because there were no banks in that Black community in Washington, D.C. at the time, which is now a white community, but that's another conversation. but yeah, so that's why I disagree.
Yeah, absolutely. Big round of applause for that. That's a great answer. Mike, anything you want to add? I guess this technically would be a rebuttal for you. If you want.
So first of all, I'm free now to say whatever I want to say. So
yes.
So I'll lean into Alex's
that.
desire to be a bit more provocative. So I'll add an international angle to this. In the 2000s, when I was heavily kind of into oversight of capital markets, a couple weird facts kept coming up. One was that Korea had the largest retail derivatives market by far. It was not even close globally. And that Japan had one of the largest structured note products markets by far. And then you'd ask, like, why is that? Well, it turns out Korea and Japan back then had zero growth. People felt completely trapped. And it was a way to basically swing for the fences. And they felt they had no other choice. So I think there's an analog. And so it's not unique to just the US. I think this is something that we've seen kind of in other contexts. And it's something I think the challenge is that, like, which end of the equation do you focus your resources and time on? I think that's the hard parts.
No, absolutely. I think the only thing I would add to all of that, I tend to be a big believer in financial nihilism. The only thing I would offer as a slight disagreement is I do think there is a question around expectation management with consumers in terms of, like, what financial outcome is reasonable and in what time frame. And I do think we talked a lot at this conference about personal financial management and AI and, like, giving advice to consumers. And I think one of the challenges that the AI labs are going to have, because their products are so sycophantically trying to make people happy and validate what they think, is sometimes you need a little pushback on, what you're trying to optimize for, the goal you have, is not realistic, at least in this time frame. And, like, you might want to adjust what your expectations are. Now, that bumps up against a lot of the structural barriers that you all talked about, but I think there is a bit of a tension there. That was great. Are you guys ready for another one? Okay. All right. Second prompt. Financial institutions should be held accountable for whether their customers become financially healthier. Agree? All right. I mean, this is talk about preaching to the choir. Like, that I knew what was going to happen there. All right, panelists, agree, disagree? Ooh. Yes. Nice. I like this. Mike, you're completely untethered now. All right. Let's go with agree first. So, Lisa, I'll let you jump in on this one first.
I didn't agree.
You were.
She abstained.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, you get to go last now. All right, Alex, you go first on agree.
There is so much around outcomes measurement, and it's certainly in this education and workforce, which is the space that I sit within. And I think the thing that is helpful about that, and this has been so much of the conversation, at least that I've heard here, is that it forces you to get really clear about what the outcomes are that you're driving towards. And so how we actually meaningfully assess for financial health, just like how we meaningfully assess for the outcomes of an educational experience, is it that you get a job? Is it that you get a job that is financially sustainable for you and for your family in the long term? That forces a different kind of decision-making and thinking within institutions, and to interrogate the degree to which, as has also come up quite a bit on this stage, the extent to which those decisions are calibrated around making sure those outcomes are possible for each, or those outcomes are possible for all. And so the mechanism of accountability in education, in healthcare, in financial services, is a complex mechanism, and we're about to get into why that's complex, which is exciting, but it is a helpful way to drive a deeper level of thinking and decision making, just as I think that is starting to do in workforce and education.
Fantastic. Mike, take the other side.
All right, so I obviously think that financial institutions should be absolutely doing their part to making sure that customers are financially healthier. The thing I worry about is the mode in which we exercise accountability and we hold institutions accountable. And so, like in central banking, there's this concept of Goodhart's Law. And Goodhart's Law states that any metric that's used for control purposes ceases to be a good metric. And we see this like over and over again. Like I see this with my kids. I give them a rule, and they will quickly do something that was not intended by the rule that was set for the kids. Same thing happens with financial institutions. And I think it's not a lack of courage for holding an institutional accountable. It's like, what's a mechanism that will actually be effective? And so a really great example is, I think last year at Emerge, ING came up with the way that they were measuring financial health, which was awesome.
Yeah.
So one thing a regulator could have done would be like, okay, we're going to make everybody do exactly what ING did. We're going to hold them to account. We're going to pass a rule. We're going to do all these things. I think that would have very much backfired.
Yeah.
Because it's the right idea. Like, we want to get to the same kind of destination, but the how really, really matters. And at the end of the day, you need something that's sustainable, where there's buy-in, where there can be innovation within the thing that you're doing, that it can improve over time. And so it's really it's the how. And I think that how we have to be a bit more open-minded about doing these things in different ways. But at the same time, holding ourselves accountable to make sure that's not just a cop-out. And I think that there's a real tension there. And that's why these conferences are so good, because people can come up to me and say, like, you guys copped out in doing something, which is important. Like, it's important feedback to kind of integrate as you move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Lisa, you abstained, which I didn't even know was an option. That was very creative. We didn't talk about that off stage. Anything you'd like to add to either side of the discussion?
Yeah, well, I really didn't abstain. What I was trying to do was saying a little bit of both. Both agree and disagree. Mm-hmm. And it's because I agree with what both Alex and Mike said. Financial institutions wield most of the power. So I think I mostly agree with this statement, but there also are other players in the ecosystem, right, that hold accountability as well.
Yeah.
Regulators hold a lot of the accountability.
Yeah.
We had one of the reasons that we had the predatory lending crisis is because regulators were not doing their job. But also the consumer has accountability as well.
For sure.
Can I add just one other story?
Yeah, please do.
So there's a book, Freakonomics, that came out a while ago. And this story always stuck out in the intro. He talks about how there's like a daycare center, and there was a pickup time. Mm. And they wanted parents to pick up their kids at a certain time. And then they decided, okay, we're going to incentivize that by charging money if you come late. And the idea being that that will provide the right incentives. Everyone came late because people just paid the money.
They paid the fine, yeah.
Right? And the economists that went back realized the cultural norm was much stronger than the incentive mechanism. And I think that that's something to think about. Ideally, the cultural norm of making sure that your customers are financially healthier, that's way strong. If that's just expected, you're in the uncool kids club. Yeah. If you're not doing that, I think is a much more powerful. But how do we do that? I think is the key question. Yeah.
Keep coming to Emerge. That'd be one way to do it. All right, let's do another one. Sort of a flip on this last question. Employers should be held accountable for helping workers adapt to AI-driven disruption. Agree? Okay, got some agrees. Good. All right, panelists, agree, disagree? Wow, okay. Lots of agreement. Alex, you were obligated to go first on this one.
I lead our AI work at JFF, and I was tempted to do this thing because everybody is accountable for making sure that we help folks adapt to AI-driven disruption. But here's why I think thinking about this in the context of employers is really essential. we know that there is not nearly enough training in AI happening today. In our surveys, about 37% of workers say that they have access to AI training. And in fact, when you ask people where they go to get information about AI just in the wild, about 3 times as many people get information about AI from social media as they do from traditional sources, whether it's their employer or a training institution there, and a local education institution, for example. So there's a lot there. But at the same time, we believe really strongly, and I think all of us are seeing this in practice, that AI, at least if we get it right, and that's a big if, that it will change jobs over time as much as it disrupts them. And change can obviously be very disruptive. But that is an extraordinary opportunity for employers who have massive value that they can unlock when, in addition to saying, how can AI save my people time? How can it make us more productive, more efficient? It lets us ask, are there new products and services that we can offer? Can we free up our people's time to be more empathetic, to do more to build trust, to think about new ways of engaging with customers that wouldn't have been possible before because we were spending our time engaged in this kind of administrivia, or just because we didn't have the capability to look at our data in new ways to allow us to ask these questions. And so the ability for people who are working in jobs at every level to leverage the possibility of AI in their context, in the situation of their job, the work that they do every day, to say, hey, I have an idea. And this idea feels more powerful because I understand what it looks like to use these tools. I understand what it looks like to use them responsibly. I know why my employer cares about me using these tools. I see what's in it for me. I also see what's in it for the business. That context-driven AI literacy and fluency is what will not just, I think, encourage people as individuals to make the best of this technology, both at work and outside of work, but that is what it's really going to take to unlock business value. And so it can't only sit with employers. They cannot do it alone. But if it doesn't happen at work, we lose a tremendous opportunity to support people and to really create value out of AI.
Give that a round of applause. I thought that was a great answer. And since
Thank
we
you for
all
coming to my TED
agree,
Talk.
I'm just going to jump us right to the next one. Mike, do you have something you want to add?
Actually, so can I really enjoyed the empathy discussion yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is a huge missing part of this conversation. The leaders who talk about AI transformation have zero empathy for their workers, right? They're like totally calibrated to Wall Street, to investors, to others. And if you empathize with your workers, you would exactly say what Alex said. Yeah. And I remember once, I think it was Nick Cook at the FCA said they had developed like a machine learning model to help with customer complaints. And he had gone to the head of customer complaints and said, hey, I've got this great model. You guys should use it. And the head of the department was like, no, you're trying to put my people out of work. That was his initial read on it.
Yeah.
Because that's how it was framed. And then Nick said, I went back a year later, same model, and said, what's the most drudgery work that your workers hate to do?
Yeah.
And he listed them. He's like, this model can help with that. Immediate adoption.
Yeah.
It's just like you really have to genuinely think because organizations are just made up of people.
Right.
So if you want to empower your organization, you have to empower the people. Right. How do you empower the people? We have these tools like that. It just has to be more of that. And I think we'll get there, but it's like we got to do it now before the stuff gets out of control.
Yeah. And just one quick thing. In a space like financial services where you all know this much better than I do, but so much of what's possible comes from deeply understanding a customer, the totality of their lives and what they need. Mm-hmm. And you can have a chatbot ask somebody a million questions, and in some cases that might actually work better because of how people think about trust and how they interact with AI. Yeah. But I think one of the things that I'm so excited for this space and others to figure out is when we put humans together to engage in those kinds of conversations, just by virtue of the fact that we are both people looking across the table at one another, what new things can we learn about one another? What kind of trust can we build? And how does that help us serve people in a deeper way? Imagine when that's what you can spend your time on doing. And we're not there yet, But those are tremendous jobs. If that's the way that we construct jobs in financial services, that sounds exciting to me. I'm not sure about the rest of you, but
Yeah.
I think you need exactly what Mike described, and an approach to thinking about what is the work to be done, how you construct that work, and what about that work is so uniquely human that you have to save the humans to do it, and you can let the machines handle the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I would add to this discussion that I think has been great is I think we are going to have an apprenticeship problem. I have a lot of empathy for young people who are starting their careers where, like, I was an intern, that was my first job in fintech. I did not know how to do anything, and I screwed up everything all the time. And it was an investment of years of my employer's time to get me to a place where I was even neutrally productive let alone to be actually productive. There's a slack built into the system because you're training new people to join an organization. I worry a lot about, just as a default, if we don't focus on that problem, that you'll just have an LLM do that entry-level work. And so I do think there is an on-ramp problem that we also need to solve. We have time, I think, for one more. You guys ready for one last one? All right, this is a good one. All consumer protection is a form of paternalism. There's no one left at the CFPB, so we'll just answer this question for them. How many people agree with this statement? Okay, not a lot of hands out there. All right, agree, disagree, panelists?
I'm just going to do this to be controversial.
All right. Lisa, I'll let you go first. Disagree.
I'm going to say, I want us to do one more question, so I'll be very brief.
Oh, good, okay.
The financial institution always has superior knowledge over the customer.
Yeah.
So in my worldview, you can't have enough consumer protection.
Absolutely, great answer. Mike, argue the other side of this in this room, please.
I think this is the perception of consumer protection. And unfortunately, I think sometimes perception does become reality. And I think what's exciting about the period we're in now is, like, a lot of things are being rethought. And you've got consumer protection, protecting from harm. But at the same time, there should be consumer promotion. Like, how do you build things that will promote consumers, not just, because the best way to protect people from harm is just to have no consumer finance at all, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't make any sense. So I think it is just kind of opens the aperture. Again, I don't really agree with this statement, but it does open the aperture to say, like, let's be more open-minded about thinking, like, what could consumer protection be other than simply helicopter parenting people from things, but like building things for folks so that they're empowered. And I think I think the folks in this room get that. I'm not sure the folks outside of this room get that as much.
Well, it's one of the reasons I wanted to ask this one is I spend a lot of time with fintech founders and their default is to this statement, right? Like, don't tell me how to build this product. Like, our customers are adults, they can do what they want. And of course, that's not the right way to build products or to think about it, but it is sort of an allergic reaction they have to certain forms of consumer protection regulation. And I think that's something to be aware of and to design around. Lisa, at your request, and because you were so fast, we're gonna do one more, all right? All right, this is a great one. I'm so glad we're ending on this one, actually. The financial system cannot fully optimize for financial health and shareholder returns at the same time. Ooh, good question. All right, show of hands in the audience, agree with this? Okay, there's a couple, all right, good. All right, panelists, agree, disagree? Disagree, agree, ooh, good, okay. Let's see, Alex, I'll let you go first on the disagree side.
I'm gonna cheat a little bit and just say this, I'm gonna make the moral argument. We can't allow this to be true. We just can't. I don't know fully how we get there, but I don't want to live, because I think Mike was telling us that he had a conversation with a founder who thought capitalism would be dead in 18 months.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I agree with that, and while we live in a world with capitalism, we must find a way to optimize for shareholder returns and have a world where each and every one of us is financially healthy. Cop-out answer, but that's my answer.
No, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's good.
Mike, do you want to go next?
So I do, there are times where I've seen founders startups say, okay, they really do want to attack the exact problems that we're attacking in this room. It starts in the right place.
Yeah.
And then economically, it's hard to sustain, and then the model shifts, and the model shifts in a way that is a bit more predatory. And I think that may be like just an underappreciation for how hard this is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's why I agree. It's like you just have to be wide-eyed. It's really hard to be profitable serving folks that are underserved. And I think we just have to be honest about that. Now, what are we going to do about that? I think is the problem to solve.
Yeah.
And as much as we can reconcile that, but it does take a bit of morality to underpin it. I think that's really, really key.
Absolutely. Lisa, this is your question. Go for it.
So for financial health to be married to customer financial health to be married to shareholder returns, the sort of goals and desires of both have to align. And right now they don't. So right now the goal of the investor is to optimize their return, the return on their investment.
Yeah.
And to Mike's point, I mean, that is directly opposed to the goal of the consumer, which is to save as much money as they can. Those two goals are not aligned. So in this construct, this capitalistic construct, I mean, there's going to be disagreement. You're going to optimize one at the expense of the other. And until those goals get aligned, and I think, and look, we all are investors in this room. If you got a 401k or, you know, you're invested in stocks or things like that, you want to optimize your return on your investment. But I do think that as investors, we have to be more socially and morally centered so that consumers are not paying the cost and losing out in the end. So when those goals, I think, are more aligned is when we can see that occur.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the thing I would add to that is that a lot of this alignment is a mismatch of timing, right? If you're optimizing for quarterly returns, it's really hard to generate good financial health outcomes at the same time.
Exactly.
If you're optimizing over decades and investing over decades, it's much, much easier to align outcomes with customers and your returns. So
Alex,
you have to think about that.
Can I add on to that just real quickly?
Yeah.
One of my favorite CEOs of all time, Steve Rasmussen, the former CEO of Nationwide, he said exactly this. The Nationwide is a mutual insurance company which is owned by all of the insureds. But even though they're a mutual insurance company, his board was holding him to the standards that had been set by Wall Street analysts who would come in and analyze the company and review the company on a yearly basis. And he said, once I got my board to stop tethering what the Wall Street analysts were saying, who were fixated on quarterly returns, and get them to tie my compensation to the dream and the vision and the mission of our corporation, he said it was always this fight. But once the board said, okay, we're going to jettison, we're going to forget what the Wall Street, we're not going to pay attention to what the Wall Street analysts are saying, they started making money. And guess what? Making more money, and their employees were happier because they were focused on the long-term investment, the long-term sustainable goals of the corporation, which was mutually aligned to the goals and the desires of their customers. So your point, perfectly well taken.
Absolutely. That is a great place to leave it. Please join me in thanking my panelists. Fantastic.